Such a long process it is now to go online on Prism Studio. Oof. Hope everything is working at all. Okay, so multi-streaming is dead for free users, which totally understandable, actually. It was a really interesting thing. It's just like, built-in multi-streaming into the app. I have no idea how they were justifying like running that thing for free. I mean, I suppose like limited time, free, like, how would you call it? Trap, for potential lifelong users. But yeah, okay. So right now this is going to just YouTube, at which point like I could technically, theoretically, just use the YouTube app, really. The only reason why I wouldn't want to do it is because obviously there are more features here, but I'm not really using any of them anyway. I mean, yeah, bitrate can be limited here, but I don't know, the dynamic one in the YouTube app is pretty alright. You can go 60 FPS here, you cannot on YouTube app. It's like locked to what feels like 24. But I don't know. Anyway. At least I didn't have to relog into this thing after updating. Yeah, I was using Prism Studio, like the version I installed a year ago, I think, or maybe even longer. God damn. Yeah, for about as long as I could without updating. Just updated it, and like all this crap like hits you in the face, and yeah. Okay, anyway, 2 minutes of nothing. I wonder if like Bluetooth microphones are supported now. I wonder if my actual Bluetooth earpiece is currently being used. I doubt it. I doubt it. I looked into it a while ago, and for some reason, all of the streaming, whatever you call it, streaming software for Android, like nothing actually supports Bluetooth microphones. I suppose people who do it professionally, they probably use like radio microphones or something like that connect like directly to some kind of whatever receiver that plugs into the phone. But yeah, because if I could actually do something like that, I could say leave the phone in the corner of the courtyard while I'm playing with this little thing, or like working on something on my laptop or iPad, which I do now, because it's not as incredibly hot 24/7 outside anymore. And yeah, like I could totally, just put this thing somewhere on the tripod, which I do have, and like whatever, do whatever. But of course, like I need a wireless microphone for that, because if I'm further, whatever, then I don't know, I would say probably about 5 meters. Even if I'm like 3 meters away from this thing, it's gonna be borderline inaudible. These microphones are not as sensitive to begin with, or even if they are, it's just like everything else gets maximized, all the insects and the airplanes. It's just never gonna work. But I cannot go there, because although the camera does not pick it up, there is a giant spider web in between us right now. I don't want to duck it, because who knows how low it goes, and I definitely don't feel like disturbing it with my face. And we cannot go deep in there anyway, Pul. We cannot. It's way too thick in there right now. Please don't take that out of context. Anyway, I was thinking of doing a relatively short stream-ish about nothing else in particular. I was honestly aiming for something like 5 minutes. And that's about it. 5 minutes. So see you guys later. No, okay, seriously though. It's been a hot minute. I don't remember when was last time I streamed. Probably a week ago or 2 weeks ago, something like that. So I felt like it might have been 2 weeks. So here I am. Just kind of wanted to report that all the same things are still in the works. Just the other day, literally yesterday, or technically speaking, it was actually today, in the middle of the night, I finally implemented controller support for the menu system of CLOUDOME. So CLOUDOME now has pretty much complete 100% controller support, except for the fact that I haven't really done anything with the walking controller. But the flying controller, which in the version of CLOUDOME I'm working on right now, there's barely going to be any flying. But yeah, so priorities are a little bit reversed because, you know, you start the game in the ship. So, you know, I started my rework from the ship systems. Yeah, but yeah, it's like not the main thing really. Okay, anyway, so walking controller, yeah, haven't touched it yet because I actually need to. Oh, wow, I needed to do so many things. So the flight controls, like the flight system is now completely different. That's first of all. Second, now there's controller support for the whole thing. And third, now even menus are fully navigatable with the controller, which and none of those things. Okay, so like fully reworked flight controls, obviously that's fully my responsibility, but the whole thing with the controller support and menu navigations working with the controller or keyboard for that matter, you know, with anything that isn't the mouse cursor, right? Any of those things actually working, it is much more difficult to set those things up than Unity content creators, you know, Unity shills on YouTube, or the Unity's PR department would have you believe, you know, would have you think. No. It was actually giant pain in the ass. And by the way, literally 2 days. Well, actually, no, it's more like 1 day worth of work. But basically, out of the 3 last Unity sessions, which I know I've stated just a couple of weeks ago, I believe, in a Patreon post, that I maybe spent like couple hours a week. I think I may have said something like 5 hours a week working on CLOUDOME. Yeah, that was true, generally speaking, except for last 3 times I actually sat down to work on CLOUDOME. It took me approximately 8 to 10 hours, and out of those 3 sessions, only last one, which was yesterday, technically today, was actually successful. The previous 2 sessions, which were both, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 hours long, were a complete waste of time, because I, in my naivete, thinking, well, you know, Unity is a game engine, so there should be a way to do it relatively easily, or reliably at least. And now, obviously, I'm using AI, you know, for coding. For coding assistance, I should say. I wish AI could do all the coding for Unity. No, unfortunately. AI, generally speaking, like half the time has no fucking idea what it's doing. The other, you know, proposes solutions to systems that actually don't work at all. But yeah, I decided that you know, because there's this whole thing, if you want to make all the UI elements controller navigatable, good news is that Unity kind of has a system for that. The problem is that you have to keep track of activating that system, turning that system on and off, and obviously, you know, you might want to think about things like activating the turning the mouse cursor on and off, right? Depending on if current inputs indicate that the player is using keyboard and mouse or a controller. And obviously controller prompts need to be not control prompts, but like action prompts need to be swapped in real time, depending on the inputs also. And I thought, you know what, for about half of those things I could potentially... Aini, could you come back already? Come on, what are you eating there? I see you eating there, I think. Something. Come on, come back. I thought, okay, you know, half of those problems can be fixed if I just make a Destiny cursor, just a controller cursor. There's hardly any fucking menus to navigate, you know, and it'll be fine. You know, it'll be fine, and it'll be familiar to a lot of people, you know, and it kind of, I don't know, it makes for a somewhat of a cleaner experience potentially, and I don't have to worry about, you know, turning the UI mode on and off. Well, I was a complete idiot, because that actually, like, my game is already tracking whether, you know, the pause menu is open or not. You know, so the whole thing with turning that mode on and off, that was not a problem at all. I should have done it in the first place. Yeah, the whole Destiny like controller cursor thing that I tried doing was a complete waste of time. Unity cannot do it properly. It can only kind of sort of do it relatively easily and actually properly functioning without like glitching out total fucks with the new input system, not the traditional one but the new one, which Unity doesn't even include by default. You have to install it. It makes no sense. There are so many things that Unity should come pre-installed with that you have to install, you know, like the universal rendering pipeline, for example. You know, you have to install it manually. Well, technically you could create a project with it, yeah, but it should just be there by default. Like, there should not be an option even to create a project. Like, yeah, sure, it is like, I don't know, maybe 15% more engaging kind of like process to do graphics in Universal Renderer rather than the built-in renderer. But like, if you just start with it, it's gonna be no problem. You know what a giant problem is, though? If you make your game, or half the game, God forbid the entirety of it, in the built-in renderer, and then switch to a different one because you just realize that, listen, I cannot release the game like that. You know, all the reflections are just trash, you know, all the, like, whatever, light diffusions and, you know, all the shadows are glitching out. Like, yeah, I need to install the universal renderer. Yeah, it's gonna be the equivalent of basically redoing the graphics for the entire game. You know? Come on, Moon, you have to find a way. Yep, the same way you came. Yep. Ooh. Yeah, ooh, good. Good finding the way. No, actually, this is it. This is the correct way, Put. Yay! Woo! Woo-hoo. Okay, now stop. Okay, good poopy poop. Whew. So yeah, you can kind of make a Destiny cursor, but realistically, you can only make it with the new input system. But even then, you know, I did everything that could be done, but the inputs, sorry, not the inputs, the actions, so like, you know, press A to essentially simulate the left click, I just could not get that to work. I tried like 10 different methods. I asked ChatGPT approximately 50 times on how to make that work, and it just on the loop gave me the same like 5 solutions that were borderline identical, and none of them worked. So yeah, such a huge fan of Unity I am. Now, truth be told, I'm using an older version of Unity, of course, which, if you know anything about Unity, you know why I will never upgrade for as long as I'm working on this project. And Once that is done, I am never touching Unity again. I'm not a huge fan of the idea, say, working in Unreal Engine, either 5 or 4. 4, I don't want to work in 4 because Unreal Engine until 5, in my opinion, had borderline unusable UI. I have no idea what Epic were thinking, and still are thinking, regarding the editor UI for Unreal Engine. It's borderline embarrassing. I don't know. It's like Movie Maker plus like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, the original, you know, like ribbon bullshit redesign, which like people still cannot use. I still have no fucking idea where do I click to do anything, you know, in Microsoft Word at least, but the rest of the Office as well, pretty much. Yeah, like think of all those things. I have no idea how people work in Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine 5, I mean, it's terribly unoptimized. Like, I would be pretty interested, like, honestly, I would not mind at all. I would be very interested to create a game that was actually visually stunning in kind of like a next-gen type of thing, you know. Let's make like really cool volumetric clouds. You couldn't do that on PS2, right? Let's actually make something that's graphically like, wow, okay, this is something that you don't see every day. It's I keep bringing up that example a lot, but like, remember how in Soma the game opens, you're like in this like Canadian apartment, and it's like the most detailed apartment that you've ever seen in any video game until then. It looks very high poly. There are so many interactable things. You open every drawer, like everything that you would expect to be there is there, and it's an actual physics object. And the rest of the game isn't even on that level of detail. But that room, not that room, that small apartment in Soma was like legit more immersive than, first of all, the rest of the game, but also like not a single immersive sim just has that level of detail in the environment, you know. If you were to give me a GTA game with that level of interactivity, I would legit tell you, yeah, dude, like that's frigging immersive. Like, I don't even care that there's borderline no story, the voice acting sucks, there is no gameplay. Like, the level of detail here legitimately, I just kind of want to like explore everything, because there's a difference between, hey, do you want to explore a giant flat map where there is nothing in there like at all, or hey, here's like a one little room and you can literally interact with everything. Like, I would be, hey, I'm like, yeah, sure, you know. It's not as interesting to just go in a straight line in the desert, you know, there's nothing there. But if it's a small room full of detail and like things I can touch or break or find or whatever, like, yeah, you know, that sounds like a bit of a not necessarily a gimmick, but it sounds like something to do, right? It's in the same vein where if somebody brings you out into like an like alleyway, LA, I suppose, or whatever. English, Meiserfucker. Do you speak it? And well, what do we have in the alley? We have some garbage bins. We have some trash. Maybe there is a car parked like somewhere. And there is only so much walking, you know, up and down the alley you can do before you're just like, okay, can we go somewhere else? But a probably even like square footage, you know, wise, in terms of just like square footage, much smaller space, like someone's apartment. If you were to be locked in someone's apartment that's like full of, you know, things, and you know, you were told, just go rummage, you know, through things. Just look around, go rummage, you know, read some books that you have, that I have here, you know, touch some collectibles, you know, play with animals or whatever. You'd be like, oh yeah, there's like so much just things to interact with, you know. Ooh. Oh. Oh. So yeah, I would not necessarily mind, you know, making something like that, making something that's like, actually, yeah, you look at it and say, yeah, graphics don't make video games, but I can clearly tell that, like, this environment is more than just polygons. This is like actual livable space that was created. So yeah, man. And nonetheless, I have zero interest in doing something like that unless I'm sponsored, so that I can have at least some resemblance of a team, because Unreal Engine, neither 4 nor 5, is intended to be used by one person. No. Those engines are created. Unreal Engine was originally created as an outsourceable, as a sellable product, as a licensable product, specifically for studios, not for individuals. Unity was made for individuals and studios. The entire workflow of that thing, it is made for a studio. It is not made for one person to be running that whole thing. It's like running a locomotive by yourself, okay? Or like a giant ship. That, like, there's supposed to be one person on navigation. There's supposed to be a whole crew of people in the engine room, right? Like, that's supposed to be run by one person. That's Unreal Engine. But you would sooner find me using Unreal Engine than Unity for my next project, because Unity is just, you know, yeah. It would be idiotic of me to keep using like the 2021 version of Unity. And also, if I start a completely new project, there would be like literally no way for me to prove that. Because right now, you know, I have this tangential proof that, well, I actually... Annie, come on. Let's go for another walk. Come on, one more loop. Annie, get down. I cannot turn... Sorry. I need a third hand right now. CLOUDOME, at least, actually, well, CLOUDOME didn't start development in 2021, but it is based, or at least it is developed on top of a proof of concept project that I actually did in 2019, I believe. Yeah. So I did update Unity since then, but since 2021, I've stuck to... Aini, I have no idea where you're going. This direction. Come on. Over here. Come on. So yeah, if I were to start a new project in Unity, that would be an explicit, me explicitly agreeing to, like, whatever, you know, 2025, 2026, 2049 terms of service, you know, with Unity. As it stands right now, the last ones I agreed to were in 2021. Right? Way before Unity had decided and then backed down, and it's only a matter of time before they decide to do it again, you know, charge per user install of a game made in their engine. You know, absolutely idiotic. When I was considering Unity even originally, like, Unity already charges developers who make, like, good money, you know, like, big games on Unity require, like, Unity Pro license. Is that not enough? Like, I don't understand. Like, I knew all those things. I never, you know, came into game development on Unity, like, thinking that it's, you know, it's a free engine. Heini, come on. Not our territory. Come on, Mitch. Let's go to some more open space. Yep, over here. Come on, buddy. Yeah, but agreeing to anything right now, because I'm pretty sure if you agree to something, like even though right now they don't have those fees, they probably have something in TOS that basically says you are agreeing to whenever we decide to implement those. And I believe even in my current state, if my game somehow went big, right, and Unity decided to charge me for that thing, to which I never agreed, they probably could. I don't think I'm legally protected in any significant way, unless like I personally take it, to court with Unity. I don't think I'm protected. And even then, obviously, I wouldn't be protected. I would just have to prove that, no, that was not a thing when I started doing it. You altered the deal. That would not be a protection. That would be, whatever, arbitration. So yeah. Funny. Still working in Unity, yeah. And maybe this is how I started talking about the whole thing, thinking in this line of thinking. Maybe more modern versions of Unity actually have something built in specifically for that. But like technically, the new input system is supposed to be the thing that has, that functionality built in, and no, it doesn't. Maybe Unity does something on a more core level in newer versions that allow for that to function properly. But no, the new input system by itself, no, it doesn't. So yeah, I just have normal controller navigation instead. It took about a day to do, and before that, I have literally lost 2 days trying to make a mouse cursor, to control it with a controller. And I got close. I got it semi-working. On Windows, I can actually make it to where I could potentially even ship it, although there's a little bit of a bug with it, but it's shippable. But it's done through a kind of like hacking into Windows, so it's not cross-platform compatible, that method. And in fact, it would probably result in a compiling error for other platforms, like in the first place. That's my assumption, at least. So yeah. A little bit of an update on CLOUDOME. I have still been working on it. Trying not to... I'm trying to time box all of my projects right now, but that specific thing with Unity, the mouse cursor thing just completely not working. When you sit down to make something and you're thinking, okay, I have a couple of hours. Sometimes, if 4 hours later the thing still doesn't work, you just cannot let it go, right? You need to keep pushing. So that's what happened to me. But I will now be returning to more of a time-boxed approach to this whole thing. Was absolutely doing some more music stuff. Still time-boxing myself. If I could be full-time musician, I would have probably done, well, since my last release, the combined double release of Measurable Illusion and Surrender Depth maxi singles, I probably would have already had like 2 or 3 more things to show. And yeah, still working on Across Zero, and actually a mini announcement with Across Zero. I will probably start posting chapters one at a time, and then organizing those posts into collections on Patreon. Because I think, why not? because I think why not? I have already I've shown my manuscript to enough people right now so that, you know, it's technically out there. And it's not like any of those people, like, I don't think anyone would like steal it or anything, but I'm just thinking that I might as well have it so that, you know, people can just find it if they're interested, or if I just like mentioned it to someone, so that I don't have to like manually send it to anyone ever. I can just, hey, it's just on my Patreon, here's a link. I don't know if I'll do it if I post the entire manuscript like that, but I probably can, because, you know, if that is to ever organized in any kind of like proper book release, obviously the whole thing will have to be entirely differently formatted, and I will probably give it like 20 more passes. You know, the polishing process is really unending. But the state in which the whole the state in which the manuscript is right now, it's already perfectly demonstratable. So yeah, that's the thing. I don't think I will be shooting myself in the foot if my novel is available on my Patreon, and if I ever do like a self-publishing type of thing. It's I don't think there's any kind of conflict with that. You know, plenty of books that eventually ended up like either picked up or, you know, later published and actually recognized. Plenty of them started, you know, were originally published on someone's blog or something like that. I think it's perfectly fine. In fact, it's a way for me to, I think, maybe potentially even protect myself from like legitimately someone, you know, stealing my manuscript or something like that. Because I'm gonna have here, I have tangible proof of, you know, this thing being, you know, done by me and, you know, originally posted by me. So that means I own it. At least that's how I kind of like interpret copyright laws. At least I may be wrong about it. Yeah. How updatable those posts will be, though, I don't know. Because, of course, I'm not really writing the whole thing in a Word document. So the proper manuscript form is a separate file. The whole thing, obviously, I write it in Cloud so that I have access to it, you know, from different machines. And then I also will have postings on Patreon. Like, it's already pretty convoluted. Because obviously I have kind of like backups for basically giant PDF files that are kind of formatted like an ebook. Plus I have the quote-unquote official, you know, proper manuscript form of it, and I have the cloud form that, like, in which I actually work. So I already have like 3 versions to keep updated. If I add a Patreon version to it, I don't know if I'll keep updated or if I will just like kind of like freeze it in time as the quote-unquote original, you know, Patreon version. I'll probably just do it like that, unless I discover some major mistakes, I suppose. So yeah, Still working on all the things. Once I properly finish the controller for CLOUDOME, so that the walking controller works also, I need to redo the interface a little bit. Still working on the cockpit experience, so to speak. I will do a proper announcement, and we'll probably even upload like a playable build to IndieDB, because why not? Yep, so those are all the things. And oh hey, the other day I watched finally for the first time sorry, had to put out a cigarette in my hand. I watched Blade Runner 2049 for the first time. I did watch like 1 second. Aini, don't go far. You are literally on my pinky right now. Yeah, a couple of years ago I watched probably like 40 minutes of it, and have finally watched it in its entirety. And yeah, oof, it's a rough experience. It's a rough experience. I now understand why the whole thing kind of like spoke to a certain type of person back in the day. And I find it rather comedic, actually, now. Like, no, guys, that movie ain't it. I know that most would probably agree with me anyway, because the movie not only flopped, but initially, I think a lot of people were kind of confused with it. But the critic consensus has pretty quickly normalized somewhere around, yeah, the movie is pretty meh. But I know that there was a bit of a confusion regarding whether the movie is deep or not, whether it's a quote-unquote visual masterpiece or not. Visual masterpiece, yeah, I kind of liked the first half of the movie. The cyberpunk aesthetic was relatively respected, although the movie literally opens, starts in daytime. But then the second half of the movie is just like your typical, Aini, shh. Typical, just like Hollywood slop of like epic orangeness and blueness. And I did not particularly enjoy that. There's basically no music in the entire movie. There are no themes, no nothing. There's just like cinematic Hollywood, woo type of thing. Ryan Gosling is like absolutely terrible character, who's supposed to be like this very deep like metaphor, not even metaphor. He's supposed to be like a social critique of like inceldom, I suppose. But then, like, the thing is that his character is not the society. Like, his character is purposely the way he is. Like, the rest of the humans, first of all, the rest of the humans in 2049 aren't really necessarily much better off than synthetic humans, because like we have the whole orphanage situation, which by the way makes absolutely no sense. Why is there like an official official orphanage in this place that isn't even part of the city? It's just like a giant like wasteland, Mad Max rules. Whatever. And like you see that, you know, the children in that orphanage are basically slaves. So like what exactly is the difference between like, oh, you know, synthetic humans are being enslaved, okay, and humans, you know, aren't being enslaved or something? Like, I don't think the movie even sticks to, kind of like to its own commentary very well. And yeah, like the whole thing with Ryan Gosling, you know, being this thing where in the dark future of 2049, the only relationship a man can hope for is a relationship with an AI girlfriend. That's just Ryan Gosling. Like, it's not the norm. It's not like the movie at least does not establish any kind of well, it does not establish that he wouldn't necessarily be able to get himself an AI girlfriend or a replicant girlfriend. Like, it's just all of that is by choice. It's not a commentary on society, really. It's just commentary on, you know, Ryan Gosling character Kay or Joe or whatever, who just doesn't have any character. He's constantly sad. He hardly has any emotion, except for when the script, one time in the entire movie, when the script tells him to have emotion. And apparently that makes him very, very cool, right? He is essentially the Sigma male, right? And incels think that it's very, very cool, I suppose. Because I couldn't quite understand the whole thing, I suppose, until I watched the movie just recently. Why so many people, you know, were claiming that the movie is like deep or whatnot, and that it speaks to them. And now I see. Now I see. You know, because Ryan Gosling is truly, you know, he's the hero for all the incels who are 100% voluntarily in this situation they themselves kind of like despise, you know, and blame society, you know, to getting them into. But they are in that situation purely voluntarily, really. And yeah, I kind of disagree with there being any depth to it, honestly. And the whole like commentary angle, the movie kind of contradicts itself in that regard quite a few times. Yeah, and by the second half of the movie, it falls apart into this basically Hollywood schlock. I'm not even going to comment on the fact that the ending like makes absolutely no sense. So there's this resistance, and you need to help the resistance because that's important. And then we don't even like, what's the resistance? What does the resistance plan to do exactly? Those like, you know, 20 odd replicants. What are they? What's their plan? Like, I don't know. And Ryan Gosling basically just, you know, saves Deckard, and that's it. That's the end of the plot. Like, for all intents and purposes, like, if there's any genius to 2049, is that 2049 has literally no story. And I know that original Blade Runner was so slow-paced and kind of vague that a lot of people claim that, you know, that movie was just confusing and basically the entire movie nothing happened. No, you needed to pay very, very little attention deliberately if that's the claim you want to make. In 2049, there is basically no story, like, literally. And, yeah, whatever. And once the movie becomes this, like, Hollywood schlock of just, like, let's have scenes because we want to have scenes. Pretty much every other scene is literally just like a set piece. You know, hey, let's establish this like cool visual space and just have Ryan Gosling kind of like walk through it with like no logic at all. By the time we get to Deckard, all logic is just left on the table somewhere. You know, we have the whole bees farm, right? The bee farm in, sorry, did I say Hollywood? Las Vegas. In Vegas, right? We have the bee farm in Vegas. Bees need like nature to exist. You know, the filmmakers probably didn't realize that. You know, bees need like meadows or, you know, apple trees, things like that. You cannot just have bees in the middle of a wasteland. They wouldn't survive, for very obvious reasons to everyone who knows what a bee is. But yeah, like whatever, we're just gonna have them there because we need to show that, you know, people find a way to stay in touch with nature and live off of nature, even in this, you know, technologically corrupted age. Yes and no. I appreciate the sentiment, but doesn't really work in the universe that you yourself have established, in the scene, in the environment you yourself have just established. And then we have Ryan Gosling, like, you know, when they're trying to escape that hotel where Decker is hanging out. Decker closes the door when he's running to his vehicle, to his car, and before the car explodes, the Ryan Gosling character, because the door is closed, he just bursts through the wall. And even in the shot, like it's you could have made it so that it's like a really, really thick wall, thin wall, made out of like just like cheap plaster or something. No. The scene clearly shows that it's a giant, like a foot thick concrete wall, and he just launches himself through it. He doesn't even, like, he basically walks through it. And it's like, yeah, it is established that pretty much all of the replicants have like inhuman strength, but simultaneously they have organic bodies. So it's kind of like, you know, human bodies are actually much stronger than humans itself, right? Because we have all kinds of that, like, you know, don't allow us to perform feat that would otherwise, you know, that could potentially, you know, harm our body. Like maybe you could lift 500 pounds theoretically, but then 3 seconds later your bones would snap, you know, and your muscles would rupture. So that's why humans cannot do it, despite the fact that maybe technically, maybe, you know, a human could potentially do it. So that's, I suppose, how replicants are portrayed. They are portrayed as like these humans, but without, you know, human limiters, pretty much, because they have just like normal organic bodies. Well, no matter how many limiters, you know, Naruto style limiters you turn off, human body cannot launch itself through a like 1.5 foot thick concrete wall. Like, you're just not gonna break through it, you know, it's just physically impossible. You can squish yourself into a puddle, you know, against the wall, maybe, if you have enough strength unlocked, but you wouldn't be able to burst through it, you know, it's just basic physics. A human body wouldn't be able to do it. And that's kind of like semi-established even in the opening of the movie, when Batista, you know, literally breaks a wooden wall, like a wall made out of like shitty plaster with literally nothing in between, you know, basically just like drywall, nothing, drywall. You know, he smashes K through it, and that's actually somewhat realistic. Like a human person, like if you absolutely wanted to punch through a drywall, you could. And it actually takes him like 5 or 6, whatever, you know, 10 punches to do it. Well, later in the movie, Kay just walks like a in the middle of the RoboCop movie, when like RoboCop first goes like to patrol the streets, the hostage situation in like a city hall or something, where RoboCop just like reaches through the wall to apprehend the guy who is holding hostages at the city hall. Like Ryan Gosling basically just does that. He just walks through the wall like a Terminator, like RoboCop. And like this is just Star Wars, you know, at this point. This is just Disney Star Wars I'm watching. This is not Blade Runner, and this is nothing even remotely believable. And I'm not gonna go into detail, you know, about, but you know what I mean, right? Like if you don't know what I mean, like it's there's no reason to, you know, argue. You can have a science fiction universe, but there's still need to be some like universal, you know, physics laws to it. You cannot have if you want to have your character be a Superman, it needs to be established that your hero is a Superman. You know, there are limitations to things like that. If you want to have something that is believable, something that has internal logic, because if your sci-fi doesn't have it, then it's no longer a sci-fi, it's a superhero movie. And yep, the whole thing is fiction, but we suspend our disbelief when we sit down to experience fiction. And when you do something like that, you break the contract. You know, you think we're gonna keep believing in something like that? Well, no, we cannot, right? The contract is signed in the first, like, I don't know, in the first minute, in the opening act of every piece of fiction. And you cannot just later break it just because you feel like doing it. But Hollywood doesn't understand that. So yeah, that specific scene basically completely took me out of the experience. The whole Orange Vegas thing like was already like, what is this? This is not cyberpunk. This is just like cinematic, you know, Hollywood schlock. And yeah, and the rest of the whole thing was basically the same way. I did really enjoy though that giant wall, like very like Pacific Rim. Is it Pacific Rim or Pacific Rift? What the hell? You know the movie I'm talking about. That like just giant like anti-kaiju wall along the beach of Los Angeles. And like around it is just darkness. That was pretty, not even necessarily super cyberpunky, but it is something that you would expect to be on the edges of a dark cyberpunk city. And the whole thing with like, it's just darkness except for the exterior of the car being this just bright beacon of light, but everything else is just darkness and water and that giant wall. That was cool. That was one piece of imagery. That was one scene that was just like straight out of like a David Cage game, you know, where like we really thought deeply of like making one really cool scene that looks cool, that plays cool. Like that is something legitimately you would have in a David Cage game. Because that scene felt very deliberate, and it felt like whoever came up with that whole aesthetic, that whole visual part, like they were really going for what they ended up, for what they ended up with. Like they really had a vision. Everything else, some certain parts of the like futuristic LA cityscape, they look okay. And when did the movie come out? It came out, I think it was 2019, right? Yeah, for 2019, you know, it was pretty impressive maybe. But the cyberpunk aesthetic has been, the quote-unquote generic cyberpunk like cityscape aesthetic has been so done to death. Like these days AI can generate you something pretty much approximately the same. You know, original Blade Runner worked because of the grimy, claustrophobic like environments that were very up close and personal. The aesthetic of infinite, dark, futuristic cityscape, honestly, it's pretty generic. Like some parts of it, absolutely, I understand how some people were very impressed with it. but honestly, just no. You know, for me personally, it felt very generic, very shallow, and very kind of like, you know, we kind of Googled what cyberpunk is, and we just learned about it yesterday. So here's a futuristic, you know, cityscape for you. Does that qualify as cyberpunk? Cool. Will you buy that? Are you gonna pay me, you know, to see a movie about something like this? Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't think it's. I don't think. I don't think the filmmakers behind 2049 really understood the assignment. They just kind of like got the cliff notes, and then, despite relatively okay understanding of the cliff notes themselves, you know, they didn't get the larger picture, you know, because they decided, okay, cool, so now we need a daytime scene, now we need an orange scene, you know, and it's just like, guys, remember how incredibly dark Blade Runner 1 was? No. We cannot have something like that in 2049 because, you know, we need giant open spaces, and for giant open spaces you need to light them up so that people, you know what they're looking at, so that they can appreciate the epic scale of what we have built. And it's like, yeah, guys, I appreciate the scale, but cyberpunk is not about scale. So yeah, ended up just with pretty much no story. The movie is definitely rather slow, and there's a lot of quiet portions of it, which is kind of unusual, kind of unorthodox, right, for a Hollywood movie. So yeah, it is definitely an interesting example, you know, for modern cinema. You know, it is something that's relatively interesting to analyze. It's something that's relatively just, you know, refreshing, I suppose, in a certain way. But they could only make about half a movie worth of that, and the rest is Hollywood schlock anyway. And they also completely missed the point of the actual themes of cyberpunk, which is identity, memory, you know, transhumanism, and ontology. What does it mean to be you if you can be digitized and copied, right? What does it mean to be anyone if memories can be deleted and implanted? And Kay does have a little bit of that in his kind of like character arc and his like personal conflict, I suppose. But the movie doesn't focus on that as much as it focuses on the stupid fucking romance between him and his AI girlfriend that absolutely doesn't go anywhere. You know, it just, you know, tries to explore the little bit of the fact that, well, his girlfriend may not be real, but he's real for him, and he cares about her. Despite the fact that, you know, that she is not real. So I suppose, like, the biggest kind of like identity and transhumanism theme brought up by the entire movie is that is constructivism of a kind, I suppose, which is also very important, I suppose. And constructivism is where, well, you know what constructivism is, I hope. Essentially, the exploration of the fact that the reality is defined by how we interpret it, right? So if I decide that my girlfriend is real, it doesn't really matter all that much if she's actually real or not. She's real to me, therefore, like, to me, she is as good as real. Okay, cool. Like, I get that approach. But it doesn't really get explored in any way. It's kind of just like a background thing that awkwardly ends very abruptly and anticlimactically. And the whole thing of like Kay being the outsider because that's the future of humankind, you know, is like loneliness or whatever. Kay is lonely because he's lonely, because his girlfriend is an AI bot. There are plenty of humans in this world, you know, and despite, you know, people telling him, oh, fuck you, you skinwalker or skinbag, whatever, right? At the police station, the movie does not establish that some like a life, I suppose, because obviously he has freedom, you know, to have his own apartment, you know, he has freedom to have his own like fake girlfriend. So there must be like wiggle room, I suppose, for quote unquote having a life. Anyway, I just kind of like, all of those are just kind of like random on the surface of my mind, elements of the movie. Obviously it was not a proper dissection. Probably have not explained myself very well. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there that, yeah, been meaning to watch the movie for the longest time, and I kind of like semi-hoped at the back of my mind that maybe it would it was somewhat of a modern classic. Like I knew that people like didn't like it mostly, and that a very, very small group of incels essentially, you know, claimed some profundity, I suppose, for it. But I was just like, you know, I couldn't tell for sure, because and like the original Blade Runner either, which is pretty much the greatest movie ever made, you know, based on one of the most important pieces of literary science fiction ever written. I mean, it's a short novel, obviously, but the idea, it's a short story, you know. The original, you know, Philip K. Dick, Do Androids, whatever, Dream of Electric Sheep, right? Is that the name? Yeah, that's the name, I suppose. Read it a while ago. Much recently, I read the Total Recall. What, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and I keep misremembering the name. Like, is it We Will Remember It For You Wholesale, or We Can Remember? I just, you know, those stuff, like my brain keeps mixing those things up. Yeah, so, you know, normies didn't quite understand Blade Runner either. So 2049, I thought maybe was somewhat of a modern classic that was like misremembered or misunderstood. Something like Dread 2012. Like, a lot of people don't even know about Dread 2012 is like probably the best like pieces of cyberpunk world building and just generally like narrative, you know, made by the relatively contemporary kind of like whatever entertainment industry, the Western one at least. Absolutely, man. And also, from a very interesting perspective, a lot of people misunderstand. They think that cyberpunk is supposed to be anti-establishment because they think, oh, punk, you know, means that. Punk doesn't mean that. Punk means a combination of things that don't go together. Specifically, with cyberpunk, it's high-tech and low-life. So anti-establishment in the sense that, you know, the government is either corrupted by the big corporations and or big corporations actually just run things, and the government borderline doesn't exist anymore, because basically capitalism bad, corporations bad. Yeah, we've seen all that, we know all that, but those tend to be background. You know, the origination of the cyberpunk genre, it's like I said, it's ontology, constructivism, identity memory, and individualism. You know, Blade Runner is identity and memory, and the second or third most popular cyberpunk IP is Ghost in the Shell. It's either, you know, slightly popular than Akira, or maybe just behind Akira. And Ghost in the Shell, the protagonists are the police. you know. Cyberpunk is not about anti-establishment. Just a side rant. Okay, that's about it. 1 hour. Pop, 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 pop. Do you wish to end the live stream?